highlight the issues that are normally faced in these projects. I've done quite a number of ERP implementations as a project manager. Now, I have seen from the previous speakers, I've seen we are actually sharing the same challenges, and I think it's same across the board. Now, one of the things that could be I would start with is there are several project failures, and this is because of a few issues that are not considered in advance. Yeah. Now, I liked what the previous presenter talked about, where he talked about ownership of the project, where it says our project. Now, from the previous experience of the projects that have been a project manager, one area which is normally very critical is actually the selection process, whereby you have to get your requirements proper to ensure that you are able to get the right product that you need. If I would just define an ERP project, I would say it's an integration of business practices and information technology. And it actually started, I would say, from, let's say, 1970s, whereby it was material requirements planning, mainly for the manufacturing. Then it came to MRP2, which basically focused on the shop floor and the distribution. Then recently, where now, several organizations realized that to gain competitive edge, ERP is the way to go. And this is where things like e-commerce, student systems, marketing, all those modules were now added to the ERP. Now, you'll realize that in the education sector, mainly the ERPs have been focusing on the manufacturing and other business sector. So recently what the ERP manufacturers did, they checked around the school systems which were doing very well in the industry and bought them. Like if you look at PeopleSoft, which is Oracle, they also looked for a school system which was in the market, combined Navisions, the same thing they did, SAP, and several other companies to ensure that the ERP was complete. And then we go back now to the selection process. Now, once you are determined that you really want to go for the ERP, one thing is to ensure that the requirements are actually complete. Yeah, you check the requirements and define a good RFP document which you are going to use for the tendering, for tendering. Now, one thing is that before this happens is that there must be acceptance across the board. Yeah, there must be acceptance across the board. And this is where you do change management to ensure that you bring the management on board. Yeah, you bring all the users on board, because normally there is a lot of resistance to ERP projects. Yeah, there is normally a lot of resistance to ERP projects because users normally do what they know best. Now, this is where now you ensure that you define a project charter. The project charter will actually be the living document for the project throughout the project implementation. Yeah, and in the project charter, you'll ensure that it takes care of the institution, because you'll bring in the software vendor who will bring his product that might not fit 100% of your requirements. Yeah, and for you to ensure that the institution is protected and the project does not turn into entertainment material, then you ensure that the project charter document is well defined, because if it's not well done, what normally happens is that, and you are aware that several ERP projects, I would mention Uchumi and others, that normally have turned entertainment material, whereby you find consultants will actually come and they will be in the hotels when you are actually doing your groundwork, you are entering the data, so it becomes very, very expensive. You might start a project whereby your budget was about 50 million and turns out to be 300 million. So, but once the project charter is well defined, once your project charter is well defined with a good steering team, and the steering team should actually include the CEO himself so that there is good acceptance across the board. Then the steering team, which you normally make the main decisions, for the project. Then under that, you'll also have other teams which will be headed by the project manager. And from the previous presenter, he actually talked of how he was quite very tough on the project, because normally what happens is that if the project manager is not very tough, then the project gets into several issues, especially goes beyond timelines and budget overruns. Now, the project manager will ensure that he heads the project and ensures that all issues are actually escalated to him. Now, that is on the... Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Now, the project manager will ensure that all the issues are escalated to him. Now, the other thing that I want to look at is below the project manager, you'll have the functional team leaders and a change manager. A change manager will ensure that change is accepted across the board. And here there will be trainings on change management, whereby there is culture change, because normally users will actually go for what they know best, and they always normally stick to the manual processes which they know best and frustrate the system. And you try to move and you are brought down. Now the other thing is the scoping of the project. Normally you find many ERP projects normally get what we call the scope creep. It actually would continue for years and doesn't end, because the requirements were not well defined. So by the time now you start the implementation and you have the software that you really want to implement, now you do what we call the gap analysis. And the gap analysis now, you do a walkthrough exercise, go through the system. You could spend a whole week going through the system to ensure that you see all the functionality, and from there you are able to identify the gap between the system that you have, the system that you need, and the one presented by the vendor. Because if this doesn't happen, what will happen is that the vendor will actually keep a lot of the functionality that you need towards the end, so that it comes under customization. And if the customization was not closed and signed off early in advance, then you find that you'll actually spend extra money. And this is where the time and material comes in for a project, and it becomes quite expensive. So after doing the gap analysis, you define the customization and ensure that all the customization required is actually documented and signed, yeah, and ensure that it forms part of the project cost. And in this case, you will not pay extra money. Then there is a quality assurance done to ensure that all the customization has actually been documented.
Mr. Macharia,
yes.
Could this be the KU experience and lessons?
Yeah, it's both KU experience and there's about 10 other organizations. Because actually what happens, the ERP implementation experience is the same across the board. Yeah. Now, the other thing is that normally what happens is that as you start the implementation, there are dependencies that come up. and you need to monitor something like other sub-projects. Could be cleaning up all the data. Some things which were actually supposed to have been done early enough, and normally you realize that when you start is when you see the data was not cleaned up. There are so many things which have actually not been done. So you need also to ensure that you check the sub-projects early enough before the kick-off for the project. Then the other thing is competing projects that come up. You find that people are also involved in several other projects, and if you don't define the competing projects, you find that the resources that you have are actually involved in other areas, and you are not able to accomplish the project. There is the major thing that I want to actually mention that makes several projects fail is actually the risks. If you really don't look at the risks and assumptions early in advance, because normally if you don't anticipate the risks, you find that several risks and assumptions that you actually assumed start failing the project, especially where you find that project politics starts coming in, staff turnovers where you should have looked at it and see the backfills that are required, project managers' reluctance, and stakeholders, the budget constraint.
1 minute.
1 minute, eh? Okay. The supplier actually fails to deliver, and this is whereby you find normally the vendor would bring consultants who are actually not quite experienced on the product, and you find you waste a lot of time. This is a major risk, and in the contract you put a clause whereby you are able to see if a consultant does not deliver to the expectations, he's actually sent away within a very short period of time, because it actually turns into a major risk. Then there are some other risks that the processes which are not identified in time. I know in some projects which we were actually doing during the El Nino, and that was one of the major risks, because the project team members were not able to get into their places in time, and you find that most ERP projects, normally you have to go flat out several hours in a day to ensure that if the project is scheduled to take 6 months, you go flat out for several hours because you have consultants on board. And if it goes beyond the project timeline, you find that it turns into time and material, because the consultants will actually fly out. The other assumptions that are normally assumed are things like hardware, which you need to look at because they turn out into risks, the cross-functional teams, supplier teams, the backfills. Now, let me finish by saying that in most of the projects, when it comes to the cutover, when you are changing from the old system to the new system, there are different methods, but you find that you would choose parallel run or a direct cutover. Normally, in the several projects that ERP projects have done, I've seen that direct cutover definitely works better than when you do parallel run, because the moment you go into the parallel run, users always keep what they know best, and it might take years to go live. Then I would also mention one of the things is that you need a go live readiness plan. Once you have tested the system and you are ready to go live, you ensure that you document a go live readiness plan to ensure that within the timeline that you said we are going live within this time, all checklists are actually checked out to see all acceptance testing, all the areas are checked, and you ensure that the go live readiness plan is actually a checklist of all the areas that you check to ensure that you are ready to go live. And once you go live, you don't close again the new system to go back to the old system.